So now we start bucketing them. So if we start bucketing them, then it seems like there's a one-to-one correspondence between each one of these. And again, if I take the functional requirements, again, you use your judgment. There is no right or wrong here. There is no clear demarcation of what to do. It's up to you how you want to, it's up to you how you cut a problem into small problems. It's up to you how you use your logic or common sense, right? So for example, so at this point, if you are given a breadth-oriented problem like this, the thought process would be, hey, these are all the functional requirements that I have. Can't help, right? The interviewer has given me so many functional requirements. He or she is expecting that I'm able to handle, like, as an engineering leader, I have to handle like multi-team projects, right? That's why I have been given this. Like if I'm a director or a VP level person, and if I'm going for a VP level or a director level or a senior engineering manager level, where I have to deal with multi-team projects, then this is what I have to do, right? So this is very much aligned to that persona, right? So so here we are taking, okay, user registration, login, and profiles is something that is very different from search. Search is something very different from recommendations. And all these individual components like user activity tracking, recommendation generation, trending movies, user dashboard, these 4 components can be built under the umbrella of recommendations. So recommendations by itself is not a single component system. Any recommendations, be it Amazon's recommendations or Netflix's recommendations or LinkedIn's recommendations always has some input component, which is the activity tracking. Unless you do activity tracking, you will not be able to generate recommendations. So for example, if I have to recommend tweets to somebody, the tweet ingestion, somebody has to post tweets, right? So somebody has to do some action. That's the input. And then the processing is the recommendation generation. That's the processing, right? That's in the background. And then there is an output. The output is the curated, something that is curated for you. So typically, this is how the template. There is a template for recommendations. So any recommendation service will have these 4 components. There will be some activity tracking. There will be some recommendation generation, personalized. There will be some global recommendations, like trending movies is something that's global recommendations, not very personalized. And then the user dashboard, which will also have the watch history. So these are some of the components that fall under the umbrella of recommendations. Then payments is something very different. Content ingestion and delivery, the whole content management is very different from recommendations. Notifications is very different from every other thing. So as we see, the goal is to now just say that, hey, look, these are so many requirements. Now one team cannot handle it. Serially, if I want to build everything, I will never be able to deliver in time. So again, based on my components, based as an engineering leader, I will have to know what are the components, right? So that I can hire teams. I can hire the best possible persons for that particular team. For example, let's say content management, right? Like I would have to hire somebody who is domain experts in video encoding, decoding for this team. But I don't need that person for this team, right? I probably need an ML engineer, etc., for this particular team. So I'll have to figure these things out as an engineering leader or an engineering manager at this level. I have to kind of scope things out, right? So this is a very scope problem, and that's why I'm saying that being like if you get a breadth-oriented problem, then the interviewer is looking for something more than a technical, individual contributor level algorithm or data structures. He or she is looking for how do you take a large, like a multi-team project, how do you handle it, right? So again, this is very much aligned to some different persona compared to what we have done. In the last few classes, we only did very limited depth-oriented deep dives, right? So this is a bit different from there. Okay. So now once we have identified these microservices, again, first of all, I have to provide that umbrella architecture. And and until this point, in the last two classes, we had not dealt with the umbrella architecture. Why? Because it was a single black box, right? A single component that we are dealing with. Now there's a lot of components. So as an engineering leader, my job will be, like, believe me, if you are an engineering leader, you will have to do these things in real life. If you want to go to tier 1 companies, you have to do all this, right? So um, so now the third step is proposing the umbrella architecture, which we have not done in the previous one. So this gives us a good good opportunity to see what to do. Like if somebody gives you a breath oriented problem that has 15 to 20 functional requirements, and then from that onwards, if those 15 to 20 functional requirements fall in 10 or 15 buckets, right? So that filtering that you have already done from the requirements to the microservices, where each microservice is kind of holding a small, like, subset of the requirements. Then the third step is the umbrella architecture. So we'll propose the umbrella architecture. So we'll propose a logical architecture, block diagram of each microservice, and an API gateway to interface between the users and the system. So we will propose and explain the data flow. So we will, again, for every microservice, we will not design the APIs. We will talk about like what it's going to do or what functional requirements, right? Out of those functional requirements, for every black box or for every microservice, there will be a set of functional requirements that this microservice will handle. So we will say microservice A handles these subset, microservice B will handle that subset. And if there is a need for data or logic flow, we'll have to draw um, some communication, right? So the rules of thumb that I follow is, if high volume of data needs to be pushed in near real time between two microservices, we will use a publisher subscriber, as we talked yesterday, right? In yesterday's problem, in the streaming problem, it was not between two microservices, but it was between an external component and an internal microservice. So, but it was a high volume of data that was going to be pushed in near real time. So we used a publisher subscriber. Any asynchronous communication of events between microservices, now publisher subscribers are becoming like the bloodline. So we will just use them by default. If data needs to be pulled from server to client, we can fall back to synchronous request response REST APIs. Synchronous, anything synchronous REST APIs. If the data transfer is more offline, you can use like extract, transform, load, snapshot based jobs, but it's again very offline collection of data. So given that, uh, uh, this is some diagram that that comes to, like, all I did was, for all the microservices, I would draw a white box or a black box, and then talk about which of those functional requirements will be handled by each, and then I would draw arrows, or I would draw the communication. So here the goal is that if I have a multi-team project, I will kind of, in a large conference room, I will invite all, like, the stakeholders for each of these microservices, and I will talk, like, I will give them a very high level overview of how everything should fall in place together, right? Now each of these guys, whoever are dealing with the small components or the rectangular components, they can go back, they can schedule among themselves. For example, let's say trending movies has to talk with activity tracking, so that team and the trending movies team will probably huddle together sometime or stuff like that. So I have not put the API gateway anywhere. So where do you think the API gateway would be, Archie?
So are you asking if there should be one API gateway between the user and the entire system.
So if there's an API gateway, where should I have drawn it, or how its interaction would be?
Oh, it should be between the user and the entire system.
Yeah, so we should put the API gateway in between the user and the whole system. Now, what is the job of the API gateway? What is its functional requirement?
It needs to
Of the
route.
system. So, what is its functional requirement? Yeah, go ahead.
It needs to route user requests to the right microservice.
Yes. So, given the user request, it's going to route it to the appropriate microservice. So, since it's a system, and as we said, any system is like, or any component or any granular system can either be a key value workload or a compute intensive or streaming analytics. So which category would you put API gateway in?
The
So it's a
gateway
system.
itself.
Yeah, the gateway itself. Yeah, it's a system, right? So a system can
Yeah.
either, somebody can ask you to design an API gateway, right? So we'll have to take the functional requirements, and since probably it's a single component, right? It's not like a breadth oriented, it's a depth oriented single component. So we'll have to map that single component to either a key value or a compute intensive or stream processing. So what do you think the API gateway is?
I'm not super sure, but I would probably say in an interview setting it's a key value.
The key value, it's a lookup, right? So it's doing a lookup.
Yeah.
Given an input, it's doing some lookups to, it's doing some like X to Y, right? It takes X, does some lookup to return Y, right? It's a lookup problem, right? So lookup problem is nothing but a key value, CRUD, right? Read. Given a key, you get a value, right? So you're getting something as an input. You're doing some lookup, right? So lookup is always a key value workload. Okay, so the API gateway is nothing but a key value workload. So if somebody wants you to design an API gateway, you can go back to our key value, how to design a key value workload, and you can do it. There will be a data model, and I don't want to go into how to design, like, but you can fall back to designing a key value workload based microservice if somebody wants you to design a API, because API gateway is also a system, right? So now this API gateway will sit between this. So each of them is a system, right? The account management is a component or a microservice. Each of them are components. Now, as we said, I will put some cylinders, pubs of cylinders, if high volume of events have to be sent in near real time, or I will do some batch processing. So I will like the direct arrows are REST APIs. Okay, that's how I am drawing it. Now I have not drawn anything for search. So somebody is asking where to use load balancers, or where to use load balancers come in the picture at a later time. Load balancers are meant for scalability. So we are taking the problem at a high level. Now when we start digging deep, or when we put a microscope or a magnifying glass on each one of them, they will start expanding, right? So we are at a very high level, we will start expanding, right? So let's wait for the expansion, and then we will see where the load balancers come in the picture, right? Okay, so so the search microservice or the search component, I have not drawn any arrows. So Archie, can you say like who is going to talk to search, or like,
Yeah, my background is in search and recommendation, so yeah, this shouldn't be that hard. The user should send a request to the search API and through the API gateway.
Yeah, so that's going to be a synchronous request response. But who is going to feed the search?
The API gateway.
No. So it's an outward, right? It's a request response.
Oh, okay.
But
right. So the
somebody has to interact with the search from the other side as well, right?
Yeah. Right. So the pub sub batch pipe that you have there, that should go into search to create the indexes. Oh no! So no. Sorry, the content management.
Yeah. So from content management, it can go to search. Now I think depending upon the volume, either you can put a pops up, but I personally don't think that it's a very high volume near real time. There's no near real time requirement or high volume requirement. So whenever somebody is pushing a content, it can take some time to get into the search, as long as before the release of the content, before the content is actually released to the whole world, the search should be ready with it, right? So so I don't think there is there's no real time requirements here. But you are right that the content management is going to feed into the search engine, and the user is going to feed out of it. Now payments, who is going to, what will be the interaction of payments with any other user or any other microservice?
I think the three that I can think of, the user is going to interact with payment, the account management is going to interact with payment, and also we don't have the actual streaming portion of it where we're showing videos. That should probably also interact with payment, because Netflix has tiers that tell you if you are able to do 4K or not. So that needs to know what your payment tier is.
So content management will talk to payment initially, right?
Mm-hmm.
So depending upon the function, so that's why the functional requirements are important, right? So we spoke the functional requirements at a very high level, but again, depending upon the functional requirements, automatically, everything will be driven. Now, if the fact that you said that the content management has to deal with it, that's a functional requirement, right? So so everything is getting driven from whatever functional requirement. So the functional requirement is the Bible, right? So whatever is the functional requirement, based on that, everything will follow. So that's good. That's a good thing that you said. So this is how it's going to be. Let me take some questions now. Funny, you have a question? Yeah, you can talk. Manoj, you have a question?
Yes, yeah. Hi, Nilay. So my question is about the API gateway. So I was thinking the API gateway sits between user and account management only, because that's the first interface with the user. If that is not validated, the user will not go and do the activity tracking, right? So
no, I think,
I heard,
for example, I like the authentication system in Netflix has a very high time to live, right? I personally don't get into the account management at all from my device. I have logged in once. Probably it is 6 months or 7 months that so the dashboard, right? So the user is interacting with the dashboard. The user will interact with the search. The user will interact with the payment. So any user interaction will go through the API gateway. So whatever arrows I have drawn, they from the user side, they will all go through the API gateway. Now, so basically, you will call the authentication system once, and you will get a token, right? And your device will store that token, and then it will use the API gateway with that API key or whatever token. And then you don't need to talk to the account management at all, right? Now, if the token has a validation of 6 months, then the API gateway, depending on the API, will forward it to the appropriate, microservice.
Yeah, right? I think I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me, Nilay? Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So Nilay, when we generate thumbnails as soon as content is uploaded, or if we are going to generate different formats of video, etc., like, I mean, where will we show it? Like, do we need to show it as multiple?
So I'm putting it in the content, like the whole content management team will work on it.
Okay, got
it. Nilay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So content management basically means from procurement to delivery, right? Or everything is done by the content management?
Both the write as well as the read. Both the write API, that means the upload, as well as the read, which is the delivery. Yeah.
It means uploading the video and delivering the video.
Like the content owners are uploading some content, and then users are streaming or reading that content, right? That's
okay. And just to double sure, like that API gateway is basically the connect is the interface between user and the square box, right?
A whole big square, yeah. The big,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And
So this is again, this is very like if you have to like let's say you have to draw at a moment's notice, right? So this is a good way to draw because tomorrow you will get a different problem, right? So it all comes from your functional requirements. From the functional requirements, you will draw certain boxes. Either so if there are 10, 15 functional requirements, you have less than less than equal to 10 or 15 boxes to draw, right? Now all the boxes that you have drawn, you have to kind of show the relationship, etc. Right? So that's mostly it. Now, if all your 10, 15 things map into one box, no need for an umbrella diagram. But if all the 10, 15 things, they seem to map into different boxes, then you have to draw the umbrella. So this is a very, like a rule of thumb to draw that umbrella a bit mechanically, right? Like you have to draw it really fast in an interview setting. So there is some template or some mechanism to do it in a more mechanical way, right? That's what it is. Then
so
comes
like in this diagram, like the high level diagram, like it's very good. I think like the interviewer will quickly get it. See, one thing is like it should be simplified. Like any reason like why you put two users blocks, why not one? And that
so I did not draw the API gateway, right? So if I had drawn the API gateway, I would have just used one. Yeah. So there will be an API gateway and then the user and this, right? So that's how we should draw.
And we use API gateway only when deal with multiple microservices.
Yes, of course, yes. Yeah. Okay. So now comes, hey, I have.
Hey, Nilay, just one quick question. Sorry. In the previous slide, shouldn't there be a connection between dashboard and content management?
Dashboard. No, so it's like the recommendations, right? So it's like the recommendations is feeding to the content. So the user activity tracking, trending movies, then recommendation, and the dashboard is made of recommendations. Yeah.
Can you give me an example of user activity tracking? I mean, tracking. Just one.
So that is like let's say I have this let's say this is Netflix in Bengali, right? So let's say I clicked on this, right? So somebody registered that as an user, Niloy Mukherjee clicked on this movie, right? There's an activity, right? User, movie clicked, or user, movie watch trailer, right? So for every activity, there must be some record that has been kept, right? Now, depending upon so if I just saw the metadata, then there is some level of interest. If I watch the trailer, then probably the level of if there's an interest score for a particular user for a particular item, right? And it's very general, right? User and item. The item can be a movie, the item can be, Amazon product, whatever be it, right? So if I click on this content, so it will say user, content clicked at this timestamp. User, content watched the thumbnail in this. So this will allow the recommendation guys, right? That the brain of those machine learning people, the PhDs, to now consume it, and then they will try to score or try to recommend, right? So that's how it would be. Yeah.
Okay. So recommendation basically based on the user activity.
Yeah. So that's
like
why
in the Amazon. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is this is not a forward or this is not a explicit microservice. This is an implicit microservice. For any kind of recommendation, you have to have some notion of interest, right? So this is the way to probably gather interest. Again, this is what I think would be. I'm not a recommendations person, but you need some input to give recommendations, right? So for example, when you go to Netflix for the first time, it will ask, because it does not have the activity for you, right? Like user, as a new user, you don't have any activity logged, right? So so they will ask you certain questions to get that going, right? like what your interests are. So they will explicitly ask some of these to get that, right? Otherwise, once you are a steady state user, then they can start gathering your activities, right? Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
I can add to that. So my team does recommendations and search. So we call it instrumentation layer, where essentially instrumentation or fingerprinting layer. So the idea is anything that you do on our website, we track everything: mouse scroll, highlighting, where you move the mouse. And then on your phones, what you're viewing right now, we call it a viewport. So everything that you do on the app, we track everything. We know what portion of the phone you're focused on at this point in time. So everything gets fed in, and then we leverage and mine that information to build machine learning systems.
Yeah. So for any kind of recommendation, this is like a MVP template that you can follow, that there has to be activity tracking. And then there will be the brains, where Archie is probably working in the brains. And then the output of the brain will be something different. That's the output. It's like computers, right? Computers need an input, processing, and an output, right? So for every recommendation system, there will be an input. That's the activity tracking. There will be the processing. That is going to be the brains. And the output is, like for Amazon, recommended products. For LinkedIn, recommended persons or recommended jobs. For Netflix, recommended movies. So recommendation is it's an universal problem, right? So it's a good problem to solve by itself. Okay. So now you come to the point where, hey, I'm done with the high level stuff. I'm done with the engineering leadership stuff. Now, if you are a product manager, engineering leader, probably you will have to spend a lot more time, because all the 40 minutes, because you are not probably expected to deal with algorithms or stuff like that. So these 4 steps, I think, will take a lot more time if you are an engineering, like a high level person, right? Like a product manager or an engineering leader who has experience with multi-team projects, or who is going to a company that is wanting to hire him or her as a, like an umbrella person. Then these 4 steps will be very, very important to judge, right? So, but again, if I am like a granular software engineer or a very focused IC, then probably not, right? But depending on the persona, these 4 steps will be very important for a certain set of persona, right? Now, step 4 is the project planning, right? Like these are the components, these are the teams. Now, if you're a project manager or a project coordinator, then this step actually is not that trivial, right? You really have to, draw Gantt charts, etc., to figure out, who would do what, the scoping, the ETAs, right? The planning, right? So this is the planning phase. But in case of an interview, if you are a technical IC, you don't plan, right? You get the plan from somebody else. But if you are that somebody else who does the planning, then this is where you will plan, right? But in the interview setting, now it's time that, if somebody now wants you to deep dive, then there are so many things, right? So you have done all the planning, you have done all the high level. Now comes the point, if the interviewer now says, hey, look, I have 20 minutes left, or I have 10 minutes left, now I want you to deep dive, then comes what to deep dive on. So if there are too many microservices at this point, after you have gone through this process, you will have to kind of say, okay, these are the things that I would want to focus on, and we will go with, each of these.